What's up, everybody? Welcome to some Bontu. Not aristocrats. Nope, no aristocrats in this deck. Let's start off with Bontu. So he has Menace and Indestructible. Bontu can't attack or block unless a creature died under your control this turn. Then for 2 mana, sacrifice another creature, scry 1. Each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And I lied, this is definitely an aristocrats deck. So if you're new to my channel, I play a lot of aristocrats, so that's kind of a joke for the people who've been subscribed for a while. So, but yeah, this is an aristocrats deck. It's not 100% aristocrats, but we do have a very strong aristocrat theme in here, and then we're kind of doing on the back end a little bit of value creatures. So, but let's start with the cheap recurring creatures. These creatures go great with Bontu. Whenever I think of Bontu, I think of Gonti, and so I don't know why I keep wanting to call him Gontu. So if I call him Gontu, that's why I'm thinking of Gonti. So when we're playing Bontu, one of the things that goes really good with him is creatures that we can sacrifice and bring back to the battlefield really cheap. So running stuff like Bloodsoaked Champion. He can't block, he's a 2/1, but he has the raid ability for 2 mana. Return Bloodsoaked Champion from the graveyard to the battlefield. Activate this ability only if you attack with a creature this turn. So you get into spots where you have Bontu down, you sacrifice the Bloodsoaked Champion, get that trigger going, swing in with Bontu, and then on the second main phase you can pay the raid ability to bring him back to the battlefield. So it allows you to get into spots where you can kind of keep swinging in with Bontu. We're also running Reassembling Skeleton. For 2 mana, return Reassembling Skeleton from the graveyard to the battlefield tap. So this is another good way that you can a good way that you can sacrifice it, get Bontu up and running, and then, at the end of your opponent's turn, if you want to go for the activated ability out of the graveyard, you can definitely go for that. That way you can kind of leave some instant speed stuff up and then bring it back at the end of their turn. We're also running Bloodghast. He can't block, he has haste if our opponent has 10 or less life, and then he has the landfall ability. So whenever we make the land drop for the turn, whenever land comes to the battlefield under our control, you may return Bloodghast from the graveyard to the battlefield. So this is another cheap way to sacrifice to Bontu and then bring him back out of the graveyard for cheap. We're also running Fleshbag Marauder. This is technically not a reoccurring creature, but we're going to cast Fleshbag Marauder, hopefully get into spots where they're going to have to sacrifice a creature, and we'll sacrifice Fleshbag, which will turn on the take off the claws of Bontu not being able to swing in. So you get in a spot where you can just cast this, take care of their creature, and then swing it with Bontu. We're also running Merciless Executioner. Same thing. Each when enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. Most of the time we're going to be sacrificing Merciless and then get in the graveyard, swing it with Bontu. Outside of that, we are running the Blood Artist package because this is an Aristocrats deck. Running Blood Artist, whenever a Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Blood Artist is really good in the deck. And actually, excuse me one second. Sorry about that, I have a little bit of a chest cold. Blood Artist is really good in the deck in that we get a nice little board state up and developed. We can go for something like Damnation. Let's say that we have 10 creatures on our side of the board. Our opponent has 5 creatures on their side of the board. We cast a Damnation. That's going to be 15 Blood Artist triggers because Blood Artist triggers for our opponent's creatures and our creatures. And it's just in here just to give us a little bit of extra value off those Bontu activations. We're also running Zulaport Cutthroat. Whenever Zulaport or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Now the important thing to note on Zulaport is that it doesn't trigger for our opponent's creatures that die. It's only going to trigger for the creatures that we have on the battlefield. But once again, get down Blood Artist, Zulaport, so start sacrificing those creatures. That's going to be 2 triggers a turn, then losing 2 life and you gaining 2 life. So it's a good way to kind of stabilize and slowly wither away at their life total. We're also running Falconwrath Noble. It has flying. Once again, same thing. Whenever a creature loses 1 life, whenever a creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Now this is different from Zulaport. It's just like Blood Artist that if you cast a board wipe, you're going to be able to get all those triggers for all the creatures that die. Now, the next thing you need with a bunch of Blood Artist stuff is Sack Outlets. Running Viscera Seer. He has sacrifice a creature, scry 1. That's it. We can get into spots where we can start sacrificing some tokens and get that scry up and running. But mainly, Viscera Seer's in here. That way, if we need to go for a Blood Artist win where we can kill all of our creatures and get those triggers going, we can. We're also running Bloodthrone Vampire. It actually fits really well in this deck. Sacrifice a creature, Bloodthrone gets +2/+2 until end of turn. You can get into spots where you're using Bloodthrone as your sack outlet. You sacrifice one of your token creatures. Blood Artist goes from a 1/1 to a 3/3, and then you satisfy the Bontu clause to where he can swing in. So next thing you know, you're swinging in with a 4/6 and a 3/3, and then you can even sacrifice a creature at the last minute to make it a Bloodthrone Vampire at 5/5. So she's definitely a sacrifice outlet in the deck, but she's also a good utility beater in that you can swing in, and if they don't block on her, you can start sacrificing a bunch of creatures to get a few extra damage in. Kind of really amplifying those Blood Artist triggers. We're also running Excuse me. We're also running Heaney, Undying Partisan. Heaney has haste, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1 counter on Heaney. Sacrifice another creature. Heaney gains indestructible until the end of turn. So Heaney's kind of like a little bit of a backup plan for Bontu. We get into spots where we sacrifice one of our creatures. Heaney has indestructible. Bontu has indestructible. You cast a board wipe, then you're going to be able to swing in with a bunch of triggers on Heaney. So kind of a nice little beat stick play, but also doubles as a sack outlet. And we're also running Culling the Weak. As additional cost to cast Culling, sacrifice a creature, add 4 black mana to your mana pool. So this is something to where you can swing in with Bontu, sacrifice a creature, add that 4 mana, and then cast something like Grave Titan really quick, simply sacrificing a creature to kind of get into some quick mana. And it's just kind of a one-time use sack outlet, but it's pretty good in the deck. I didn't get a chance to fire it off, but it's a pretty good card for the deck. Outside of the sack outlets and the Blood Artist stuff, we're running stuff that gives us bodies, like tokens. So we're running the Ophiomancer. At the beginning of each upkeep you may, if you control no snakes, create a 1/1 black snake creature token with Death Touch. So this is going to allow us to get into spots where we can keep sacrificing a creature to Bontu and start swinging in. And especially if we're not having to pay for the Bontu trigger and we have a sack outlet out there, we can start sacrificing those snake tokens for free and get Bontu swinging in hot. We're also running the Autocrat. Whenever he enters the battlefield, create 3 0/1 black surf creature tokens, and then whenever he leaves, exile all surf tokens. So we're going to get in the spot to recast him. That's going to give us 3 options for Bontu to start swinging in over 3 turns. We're also running... Sorry about that. We're also running the Master Breeder. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create X 1/1 black Thrall creature tokens, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. Then if you control 7 or more Thralls, sacrifice the Master Breeder. So this is a good way for us to get a little bit extra value out of the creatures that we're casting, and then give us some more sack outlets for Bontu. We've also got Grave Titan. This is a little bit of a value creature, but he enters the battlefield, gives us 2 black zombie tokens, so we can get in a spot where we can swing in. So we've got the recurring creatures, we've got the Blood Artist stuff, the sack outlets, the bodies. We're also running the value stuff that gains value from us killing our own creatures. We're running Skirtstag High Priest, awesome card, love this card. Once we get Morbid online, which means whenever a creature dies, tap 2 untapped creatures you control, create a 5/5 black demon token with flying. Activate this only if a creature dies this turn. So this is one of those cards that we get it down early turn 2, and then it's just basically becomes a problem late game if they don't deal with it, or they're going to have to use some sort of removal on the Skirtstag High Priest before we start making those demons, because if a Skirtstag High Priest goes unanswered in a game, it's just usually going to win you the game because you just get so many 5/5 flyers on the battlefield. We're running a Pawn of Ulamog, so whenever Pawn or another non-token creature you control dies, create a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn token. So this is good for us to amplify. Let's say we're going for a Blood Artist win, we've got 5 creatures on the battlefield, 4 of those being regular creatures. We start sacrificing the creatures, we're going to get those extra Scion tokens that'll end up being more Blood Artist triggers. So it's kind of a way for us to double the amount of creatures that we could sacrifice and get Blood Artist triggers. We're also running Liliana. She cares if a creature dies. She has lifelink, 2/3 body, and whenever a non-token creature you control dies, exile her, and she comes back as a Planeswalker. Now, we have Bontu. We're in a spot to where we can kind of block and protect her. Each player discards a card, and once you get to her ultimate, whenever a creature you control dies, return to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. Really fun. That'll definitely win you some games. I have some people scoop when I've done that before, so always enjoy getting close to that ultimate. We're also running Grim Hairsapu. Sapex. I would just butcher that, I'm sorry. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. So this is one of those cards that we're going to get some nice value, simply just sacrificing a creature and drawing some cards. Then you also get into spots where, let's say we have Living Death in the hand, and we start sacking a bunch of creatures, they go to the graveyard, we're going to be drawing a bunch of cards, so at the end of our end step, we can discard some of those extra creature cards we draw off Grim, and then put them into the graveyard. We're also running Sifter of Skulls. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion token. Just like Pawn of Ulamog, it's just going to amplify the number of creatures that we can sacrifice to our Blood Artist style stuff. We're running Kalitas in here. If a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, exile it instead, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. And then it has a sack outlet for 3 where we can sacrifice a vampire or zombie and then put 2 counters on there. Kalitas is mainly in here just to kind of go beat sticks with that lifelink and then turn our Damnations and our Toxic Deluges into some nice little zombies and for Bontu to sacrifice. Running Ogre Slumlord. Whenever a non-token creature dies, that counts for our creatures and our opponent's creatures, you may create a 1/1 black rat creature token. Rats you control have Death Touch. This is one of those value ways where we're just going to get a bunch of creatures on the battlefield. Once again, just extra value, sacrificing our own creatures. So out of the value creatures, we're also running a light reanimator package in here. We're running reanimate, put target creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. We're also running buried alive. Let's say we do have living death in the hand and we need to get into a sack outlet or maybe two or three of our blood artist stuff. We can cast buried alive, put those into the graveyard, and be ready for a Balthor or a living death. We're also running Moonlight Bargain. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. For each card, put that card into your graveyard unless you pay 2 life. So basically with the, the Moonlight Bargain, so we can use this as a little bit of card draw, but we also get into spots where we have a bunch of creatures we just simply want to put it in the graveyard. This is basically 5 mana, maybe draw a few cards, or just dump all 5 cards into the graveyard. A little expensive, but we are playing Commander, and we do have a lot of ways to ramp into some higher converted mana cost spells, so pretty good card for the deck. Also running Balthor the Defiled, triple black, exile Balthor. Each player returns all black and red creature cards from his or her graveyard to the battlefield. Get it down for 4 mana, and then we have access to 3 mana. We just have instant reanimator on a stick, and we can activate that at instant speed. So you also get into a spot to where, let's say we have a bunch of value creatures out there, we sacrifice them, then we activate Balthor to bring everybody back and rinse and repeat and do it from there. And Living Death, each player exiles all creature cards from his graveyard, sacks the rest, puts them in the graveyard, brings them all back. So basically swapping graveyards and board states allows us to kind of maybe sack some creatures like Balthor and then bring them back out with the Living Death. So that's the Reanimator stuff, and the utility stuff that we're running in here. We're running Grave Pact, the utility cards that we're running. We're running Grave Pact in here. Whenever a creature you control dies, each player sacrifices a creature. This is going to be a really good way for us to make sure that the board doesn't get too cluttered on our opponent's side, because Bontu does have Menace. So, and getting into spots where you kind of go Voltron Bontu, that's definitely a game plan you can go for the deck, especially if you have Grave Pact on the battlefield and you have a sack outlet and a few creatures to sacrifice. We're also running the Vampire Hex Mage, a Dark Depths combo. It's going to come into the battlefield with those ice counters. If we have Vampire Hex Mage, we can remove the ice counters to get into that 2020 Merit Lage token. And we're also running Army of the Damned, just a good value spell. It pretty much goes into any black, mono black commander deck that I build. And it's just a fun spell, and it's just really just an army in a can. You get into the spot to where if you top deck it late game, you're already at 8 mana. It's great to get down. If you have it in your opening hand, you feel pretty good keeping it because eventually you're going to be able to get into it. So, really good card. And then as far as the rest of the deck, we're just running a a bunch of ramp stuff as far as what black can do, like extra planar lens, Mind Stone, Jet Medallion, Charcoal Diamond. I'm not going to go over those. You kind of know what they are. And we're running a lot of card draw, like Dark Tutelage, Read the Bones, Painful Lesson, and your suite of tutors, Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, and stuff like that. So, but that's the deck tech in a nutshell. The deck has been definitely a lot of fun. It's kind of weird playing Bontu, because I'm used to the Theros gods where you get to devotion and they turn online. So, and it's kind of weird that these are gods, but they have a certain requirement to make them active as a god. And so Bontu as the commander, he's definitely fun. It's interesting. You might be able to swap Bontu out for a different commander and have better results, but I enjoyed playing him, and that's kind of what they make legendary creatures, for us to have fun. So I've got some nice gameplay videos for you. Be sure and head over and check them out, and if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Thanks.